Hey everybody, this is going to be the tutorial that's going to show you how to make this butterfly ripple shawl. So for the idea behind this shawl is I really wanted to make a butterfly shawl that was a ripple, but every time I tried it would change the shape, and I knew it would change somewhat of the shape, but I didn't think it would change so much, and I could never really do it successfully. So I thought, well, maybe I could use the stitch itself to make it look more ripple. And so that's what I came up with. I decided I would use this part that was part of the riptide and let it flow into the lace stitch that I have going here, so that I have a point up like this and a point that goes down. So that was the best kind of ripple that I could get. But I think it really came out looking beautiful, and the skein also came out looking awesome. So because this shawl is basically the same start, that I went ahead and I'm just going to put the Riptide Shawl rows 1 through 5 tutorial up there, and then I'll continue when the pattern changes to show you how to start turning it into the butterfly ripple shawl. So it's going to change from a blue color to this green color when it comes to this one here. Okay, to begin the shawl, you want to start by chaining 3. 1, 2, 3. Now in the very first chain, you want to put 8 double crochets in that very first chain. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And that chain 2 at the beginning will count as your first stitch. So you should have a total of 9 stitches. For row 2, you want to chain 2 and turn. This chain 2 we did will also count as the very first double crochet of our row. So in the very first stitch we want to put 1 double crochet. Now in the rest of your stitches you want to put 2 double crochets. We're going to be doubling our stitches. Don't forget to put 2 in that chain 2 at the end of your row. And at the end of this row you should have 18 stitches. So go ahead and do that, and I'll see you at the end of this row. Be sure to count your stitches. Okay, for row 3, you want to chain 1 and turn. Now we want to put a front post double crochet worked on the very first post of the row. So we'll work a front post double crochet there. Then you're going to skip the very next stitch, and then the one after that you're going to put 2 double crochets, chain 1, 2 double crochets, all worked in the same stitch. And like I always say for my shawl videos, this is the most important row, to make sure that you take your time and you skip the correct stitches. Okay, so I put my 2 double crochets, chain 1, 2 double crochets in this one. You want to skip, make sure that you're on, that you know which one you're in here. Skip the next one, and the following one you'll put another front post double crochet, and you're going to repeat this for the row. Skip the next one, and then in the following one you'll put 2 double crochets, chain 1, 2 double crochets. Be making our peaks here. And again, find the stitch in the post that's coming out of. Make sure you're skipping the correct one, and then the following one you'll put a front post double crochet on, and then you'll continue that down your row. Skip the next one, and then the following one you'll put your 2 double crochets, chain 1, 2 double crochets, and then you'll skip one and then front post double crochet, and you'll continue that for your row. Okay, after your last peak, you'll skip the very next stitch, and then you'll have 1 double crochet and a chain here. We're gonna ignore this chain. We're just gonna be working with the post of the next double crochet, and you're gonna put your final front post double crochet on that one. Now you want to chain 1 and turn. Now we're going to be working a back post, and I cannot do a back post on the first one. So it's just going to be a front post, but the rest will be back post. So put a post stitch on this first post stitch, and now we're on our first peak. You can see the 2 double crochets on either side, and then that chain 1 in the middle. We're going to be working not in the stitches, but in between these first 2 double crochets, and we're going to put 2 double crochets in that space in between those 2 double crochets. Just 2 double crochets, no chaining. Now we're in our chain 1 space, which is our peak, and we'll work that the same way as we did last time. We'll put 2 double crochets, chain 1, and 2 double crochets. Then we're going to do the same thing that we just did between our other 2 double crochets, and we're going to put in the space between these 2 double crochets, you'll put 2 double crochets in there. Then that will bring us up to our front post double crochet that we have here, and we're going to be working a back post on there. So you want to yarn over going from here and push back and do your back post. Oh, I lost a loop somewhere. And then you'll repeat this for the round. I'm sorry, for the row. So you're going to find your next peak, and again you're going to work that the same. You're going to put 2 double crochets in between these first 2 double crochets. Then the chain 1 space in our peak here, we're going to work that the same way by putting 2 double crochets, chain 1, 2 double crochets, and then again between the next 2 double crochets we're going to put 2 double crochets. Then when we get done with that peak, it's going to bring us back up to our next post stitch. So we're going to yarn over and do our back post double crochet there. And then it's just going to repeat, putting 2 double crochets in between the 2 double crochets, and then the peak's the same, and you'll continue that for the row. Okay, at the very end of my row, you can see the chain 2 sticking up on the side because the post is kind of hiding behind here. So yarn over and go in between the chain 2 and the post, and you'll be able to do your back post double crochet on that last one. And that will end row 4. For row 5, we're going to chain 1 and turn, and we're going to do a front post double crochet on the post of the very first post, the back post double crochet we did last time. And then we're going to be working in this in between these 2 double crochets, and we're going to put, where's it? Okay, so between these 2 double crochets and the 2 double crochets of our peak, there's a space here, and in that space we're going to put a full peak stitch. So we'll put 2 double crochets, chain 1, and 2 double crochets, all worked in that first space in between. Oh, ran out of yarn. Okay, sorry about that. So now in the peak stitch, we'll put a peak stitch, just like we just did. 2 double crochets, chain 1, and then 2 double crochets, all worked in that same stitch. And then now that brings us up to our 2 double crochets of our peak and the 2 double crochets we did last time. So you're going to skip 2 double crochets, and in the space between you're going to put another peak stitch. So 2 double crochets, chain 1, and 2 double crochets. That'll bring us up to our front post here. So we're going to work our front post double crochet to end that repeat. And you can see we did 3 full peak stitches in this first section. So we're going to do that again. Again, you're going to skip the first 2 double crochets, and working in that space, you're going to put 2 double crochets, chain 1, 2 double crochets. And then in our peak stitch, in our chain 1 space here, you're going to make your peak by doing your 2 double crochets, chain 1, 2 double crochets. Then again, you'll skip 2 double crochets, and in that space in between, you'll do another peak stitch. 2 double crochets, chain 1, 2 double crochets. And then that will bring you back up to your front post double crochet. So you want to do that 2 more times, and I'll see you at the end of row 5. Okay, I'm just ending with my last peak stitch here, and then again you want to do a front post. So I'm just gonna, since it's kind of connected, the chain and the front post, I'm just gonna go under both the chain 2 and the front post and do my last front post double crochet on that row. And that ends row 5. Okay, like I said from the beginning, I'm going to now be switching to my green, and this is going to be the new film tutorial that I'm making for the ripple shawl. So to begin row 6, you'll chain 2 and turn. This chain 2 will count as the very first stitch of row 6, and you want to use the same stitch and put 3 more double crochets. So you'll be putting all these 3 double crochets in the same stitch, the very first stitch of the row. And since the chain 2 counts as a stitch, you have a total of 4 stitches here, the chain 2 and 3 double crochets. After that, you'll want to do a double crochet in the next chain 1 space. Each one of these that we made last time, these 3 cluster stitches here, we're going to be working in the chain 1 spaces of those cluster stitches. So you'll put a double crochet in the next chain 1 space. This is going to be our first anchor stitch. Then you're going to chain 5. Then you'll find your next area here, and you're going to actually use the space that this cluster is worked on. So this chain 1 space that you worked the cluster stitch in last time, you're going to pick that up. So you can go in through 1 cluster stitch and come out through the other, and you're going to slip stitch your chain 5 onto that, and then you'll chain 5 again, find your next cluster stitch here, the 2 double crochets, chain 1, 2 double crochets, and you'll be putting your next anchor stitch right there. The anchor stitches are very important to remember from here on out, and so I'll refer to these stitches here as the anchor stitch, and they're separate from the rest of the stitch that we're going here. Going to continue. Okay, so this next little, you can see from this side, see this is the back post. You need to find that stitch, and in that stitch, not on the post but in the stitch itself, you want to put 4 double crochets, all worked in that same stitch. 3 and 4, and then that is the end of the repeat. So you'll be starting again, because we did 4 double crochets here, and then the very next stitch will be our first anchor stitch. So this will be our 3rd anchor stitch of the row. Again, you'll find your 3 clusters. This one will be an anchor stitch. This is where we'll slip stitch our chain, and then our other anchor stitch will go here. So we're going to do that again. So let's start by creating our anchor stitch in this first cluster. Just double crochet, and then you'll chain 5, 3, 4, and 5. Find that middle cluster, and again you're going to be using the stitch that you worked the cluster on. So you're going to go down in the stitch below, and then come up to pick up that stitch to slip stitch onto. Then you'll chain 5 again on this side. Then you'll put your next anchor stitch worked in the next cluster, the chain 1 of the next cluster. Then again you'll find that back post running along here and find that stitch, and on the top of that stitch you'll put 4 double crochets. And then again it brings you to your next anchor stitch, and then chain 5, then slip stitch onto that cluster, and then chain 5, then anchor that again, and then again you'll come to your back post where you will put your 4 double crochets, and then you will finish your last one here, and then I'll show you how to end the row. Okay, I just did my last anchor stitch here in my cluster, and which brings me to the very last stitch of the row, and in the very last stitch you'll want to put a total of 4 double crochets all worked in the same stitch. And because it's a chain 1 and a front post, it kind of becomes all, sorry about that, I don't want to shake the camera too much, but it becomes all one stitch. You can see here this is the chain 1, and then this is the cluster. I just go into the stitch, the chain 1, just kind of make it all one stitch here on the end. And that's how you end row 6. Okay, for row 7 you want to chain 2 and turn. This chain 2 will count as the first stitch, so you want to find these. This is the first stitch of the row, and that chain 2 will count as the first stitch. So you're going to move into the second stitch of the row, and you're going to put a double crochet. And that's all it takes before we get into the center of our 4 double crochets that we did last row. There's no chain 1. Just pull that apart and have 2 double crochets on this side and 2 double crochets on this side, and in that space in between is where we're going to start creating our peak stitch, and that's how we'll be increasing this shawl, so it's very important. And you'll put 2 double crochets in there, and that's also where you'll be marking your peak stitches later, is in between those 2 double crochets that are in that one space. So now we're going to go ahead and put a double crochet in our next 2 stitches. Which brings us up to our very first anchor stitch. And now you can see that the chain 5 is coming right from this anchor stitch. So you know for a fact that that's your anchor stitch. And always use that chain 5 to help guide you to make sure that this is the correct anchor stitch. If not, it's going to mess up your whole count. So go ahead and create your new anchor stitch by double crocheting in the top. Okay, after you make your anchor stitch, you're going to be skipping. Make sure that you're looking here and you can see you have obviously you have a stitch coming out of this stitch, so that's worked. So you want to use the very next stitch, and you'll put a double crochet, chain 1. Then you'll skip 1 stitch, and in the next stitch you'll put a double crochet, chain 1. And you should be you're on your cluster here. This should be the very next stitch after this double crochet, chain 1 should be the chain 1, which your chain 1's going to cover that. See? Double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1. So you'll skip this chain 1 space, you'll put a double crochet in the next one, double crochet and chain 1 in the next one. Then again you'll skip 1 stitch, and then the next one you'll put your last double crochet, chain 1. So you should have 4 double crochet chain 1s, and you should have a double crochet on either side of your center chain 1. That's how you know you're lined up right. And then you'll find your next anchor stitch. And again, you know it's your anchor stitch because you can follow your chain 5 on this side right up to it. So put your double crochet there to create your anchor stitch on this row. And then again, you can see this is your your 4 double crochets, and again we're going to be working in between those to make our peak stitch. But before we do that, we need to work in our double crochets up to there. So you have 2 double crochets on this side of your peak and 2 double crochets on that side of your peak. So you're going to start by putting 1 double crochet in these first 2 double crochets. So 1 double crochet in this one and 1 double crochet in this one. Now the space in between, we'll put 2 double crochets to create our peak stitch, and then on this side we'll do the same. Put 1 double crochet in the next 2. So you can see that, not counting the anchor stitch, you'll have 2 and 2, and then the center 2 is your peak. And those are the ones that will increase. Your peak, you always have 2 in the middle, but the number of double crochets it takes to get to that middle place will grow every row. Okay, so now you've reached your anchor stitch on this side, so you're going to put a double crochet in your anchor stitch and chain 1. You're going to grab up your flat, make sure you don't work over your chains here, and you're going to skip this very first stitch, and you're going to double crochet and chain 1 in the next. Skip the next stitch, and then double crochet and chain 1 in the next, and that will bring us to, sorry, my yarn, and this will bring us to this is our cluster here in our chain 1. So the very next double crochet on the other side of our cluster, we want to make sure we have a double crochet, chain 1 in that one. Skip the next stitch, double crochet and chain 1 on the last one. That'll give us our 4 double crochet chain 1s, which brings us back up to our anchor stitch, and you will want to put your double crochet in your anchor stitch. Now that brings us up to our peak section again, where you will put 1 double crochet in these first 2, then in between you'll put 2 double crochets, and then you'll put a double crochet worked in the next 2. So let's do that. 1 double crochet, 2 double crochets, the space in between you'll put 2 double crochets, and then work 1 double crochet onto the next 2 double crochets, and then that'll bring you back up to your peak stitch, your anchor stitch again. So create it and chain 1, and then again skip the first. Here it's oh, there. Here you skip the first, put it in the second. There we go. Chain 1, skip the next, double crochet, chain 1 in the next. Then skip this chain 1 stitch and put your double crochet, chain 1 on the other side of this chain 1 space. Then skip 1 stitch, and the very next stitch put your next double crochet, chain 1, which will bring you back up to your anchor stitch. So go ahead and double crochet in your anchor stitch. Now you're back up to your double crochet 4. So you'll put your 1 double crochet in those first 2. Then create your peak stitch by putting 2 double crochets in the center space, and then the next 2 you'll put 1 double crochet in. Then again, the next stitch is your anchor stitch. So you'll chain 1 after that anchor stitch, and then again, I like to just find my cluster here. This is definite one you need to put in. So skip this one and put it there. So you'll be, again, skipping 1 stitch, putting a double crochet, chain 1, skip the next stitch, and on this side of my cluster, I'll put double crochet, chain 1, skip my chain 1, and then on this side of the cluster, I'll put my double crochet, chain 1, skip a stitch, and then put your double crochet, chain 1 on here. You'll be skipping this last one and going right in to make your anchor. And then again, you'll put 1 double crochet in the next 2. Then in between, you'll be putting your 2 double crochets to create your peak stitch. Then your last 2 stitches will be the 1 double crochet and then a double crochet in your top of your chain 2. And this is how you do row 7. Okay, so now we're going to do the 2 repeat rows, which are going to be row 8 and row 9. So for row 8, you want to chain 2 and turn. That chain 2 will count as your first double crochet. So working in the second double crochet and the third of the row. And then you'll see here by your chain here that this is your anchor stitch, so that is not included. And you'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is why you did your chain 2 and you worked a double crochet in only those first 2, because that brings you up to the center stitch here where you'll put your peak stitch. So put 2 double crochets in that, and then you have 1, 2, 3 double crochets before you reach your anchor stitch, which you can see by the chain that's this one. So you're going to yarn over and only double crochet in these next 3. And if you remember the previous row, you had 2 before you had to do your peak. Now this row you'll have 3 double crochets before you do your increase, which is your peak. But always make sure that you don't include one of those numbers as your anchor stitch. So follow the chains is all I can tell you. Follow those chains. The chain's going to tell you, and it's going to help you. So now it brings us to our anchor stitch, which we will put in now. And then you'll chain 5, 3, 4, and 5. And now you'll be using, we made these 4 double crochets last time, so you're going to find the center space. And again, we're going to do just like we did in the previous row. We're going to go in through here and come up through that stitch and slip stitch on that one. And then you'll chain 5, 3, 4, and 5. Then you'll find, again, you can follow the chain from the previous row right up to the double crochet, so you know that is your anchor stitch, and that is where you'll put your double crochet to anchor your chain on this side. Now we're working on our peak area again. So we already did our anchor stitch, so we don't have to worry about this next one being an anchor stitch. You know you have 3 double crochets before you reach your peak area, so do those. Did 3 double crochets, and now using the space in between, you'll make your new peak stitch by putting 2 double crochets. And then again, you know you need 3 double crochets down the side. This next one is your anchor stitch, so go ahead and put it and chain 5. 2, 3, 4, 5. Now we're going to find those 4 again, and you're going to go in through the previous hole and out through. Always seem to cover that up. So you're going to go in through the bottom and come up, because you're going to be doing a slip stitch on that section. Once you got your slip stitch, chain 5. Then you can follow your chain up to your next anchor stitch where you'll put a double crochet. Now we're going to work on our peak section again. So we know we have the 3 double crochets that it takes before you get to the top of our peak here. In between, you'll put your 2 double crochets. And then now along the side of this peak, you should have 3 double crochets. The next one is your anchor stitch, so go ahead and put that anchor stitch in there and chain 5. Again, find those 4, find the center one, go in from the bottom and out through that one to slip stitch, chain 5, and then anchor it here. Follow the chain up, find your place to put your anchor stitch here. And then again, you're going to be putting 1 double crochet in the next 3. And again, that's going to increase every row by 1. So next time you come around here, it'll be 4 before you get to the middle. And right after this stitch, in the space in between, you'll be putting your 2 peak stitches. And then now the very next stitch, you're not skipping any stitches here. You're going to be putting your 3 double crochets. Then that'll bring you up to your anchor stitch that you'll put in there and chain 5. Then again, you're going to slip stitch here in the middle, chain 5. Follow your chain up to find your anchor stitch on this side, and then again you'll have your 3 double crochets, 1, 2, and 3. Then find that space in between and you'll put your 2 peak stitches there, and then just double crochet now till you get to the end, which on this side is 2 double crochets, and then you don't forget your chain 2 on the end. And that is how you will end row 8, which is the first row of the repeats. Okay, for row 9, you'll chain 1 and turn. Then we'll be doing front post double crochets here. So working in the first 4 posts of the row, we'll be picking up that post and putting a front post double crochet. Picking up the post and doing a double crochet. You'll do that for the first 4. Remember, we did an increase the last row, so that means this row will have 4 before our peak. So we've done our 4 stitches, which brings us up to that middle stitch here, which we will put 2 double crochets to create our peak. And this is the row you want to start marking your stitches, your peak stitches, sorry. So I'm going to go ahead and get a few of my yarn markers here. But I like to finish the whole peak first before I mark it. Makes it easier. So we did 4 on this side, and we need to do 4 on this side. We have 5, but remember, one of those is your anchor. So you have 4 on this side. So yarn over and start doing your front post double crochets on this side of your peak. That's 2, that's 3, and that's 4. Okay, now I like to go back and in that middle, which is there's your peak stitch right there that you did. These are your front post here. You can go in again from the previous row and come up through this row. Then I grab a marker. It's just a regular piece of string that I fold in half to create a loop here at the bottom that I'll put my hook on and pull it through the stitch. Keep that loop up, and I'll pull the rest of my tail through my loop now that I've created. Just tug on it slightly and it'll hold that in place. And you'll want to do that for each of your 5 peak areas this row. Okay, so now it brings us back up to our anchor stitch, which we're going to put a double crochet. You'll always only put a double crochet, and then either you'll be chaining 5 or chain 1, but your anchor stitch will always be a double crochet. So now we're going to be working again on our 4 double crochet chain 1s, and super easy. Oh, you need a chain 1. Find that first of the 4 double crochets, and you will double crochet and chain 1. Then again, find your next double crochet and double crochet chain 1. Then find your next double crochet, and you will double crochet, chain 1. Then the final and 4th one, double crochet, chain 1. And that'll bring you back up to your anchor stitch on this side that you will put a double crochet in. And now we're working up to our peak again. Remember that there were 4 front post double crochets, so make sure you don't grab your anchor stitch here. Go in through your next post and do a front post double crochet on your next 4 posts. Then do your peak stitch by putting 2 double crochets in that same space in between, and then on this side you'll pick up the very next post, do a front post double crochet on these next 4 posts as well, just like on the other side. And then I go in there, find my peak stitch, put my hook through it, grab my next marker that I want to use. So I'll use this gray one. And I'm gonna mark that stitch as well. Okay, next stitch is our anchor stitch, so go ahead and put a double crochet there and chain 1. And now you're going to be grabbing a hold of your 4 double crochet, so you'll be putting double crochet chain 1 in each of your 4 double crochets. Which will bring you back up to your anchor stitch. So go ahead and anchor that down by putting your double crochet in there. Now again, you'll be working your 4 front post double crochets on this side of your peak. Then put 2 double crochets worked in the center space, and then 4 double crochets, 4 front post double crochets, sorry, worked on the post of the next 4 double crochets. Then again, find that center, and you want to put your next marker there. And then again, your very next stitch is your anchor stitch, so go ahead and put that and chain 1. And now you're going to continue by putting your next 4 double crochet chain 1s, and then you'll do your anchor stitch and continue. Don't forget to mark your next 2 peaks. Continue along this way, and I will see you at the end. Okay, I went ahead and marked my last one here, and I'm just finishing my last 4 double crochet, front post double crochets, and on the end chain 2 here is also going to be a front post double crochet. So you have your 4, and that will be the end of row 9. Now I'm going to go ahead and show you the repeat, but I'm going to do it on the actual shawl itself so you can get an idea of how it grows and what you need to look out for. Okay, so at the end of your row, the one where you don't have the front post, you'll chain 1 and turn, and then on the very first post, pick that up and you'll work a front post, and you're going to continue to work a front post double crochet down all of your double crochets. And you want to continue to do that front post double crochet until you reach the center of your 2 double crochets here that is in the middle here that we're marking. So continue to front post on all of those stitches until you reach the 2 double crochets there. Okay, now I've reached my 2 double crochets that are in my previous 2 double crochets. See where I marked the double crochet, and you want to make sure you got the right one. Then you'll pick up the post of the first, do a front post on it, and then now in that space you'll work your 2 double crochets in the same space, and then in the other double crochet you'll put front post, and then you'll continue your front post. Continue your front post double crochet until you get to your anchor stitch, which is the last double crochet here. Okay, I'm coming up to my anchor stitch, the one that's connected to my chain here, and you want to put a double crochet in the double crochet to create your next new anchor stitch. You will never front post double crochet on a anchor stitch. And then, since we're not doing the chain this time, because the chain's on the front side, we'll be doing our double crochets, chain 1 again. So you want to start off by chaining 1, finding that first double crochet here, and put a double crochet, chain 1. Then you'll find your next double crochet, and then double crochet, chain 1. And again, we're going to repeat that for the next 2. You'll have 4 double crochet chain 1s in between here. This will be my 4th and final double crochet chain 1. So you have your 4 double crochets and your anchor stitch on this side. Now you just need to finish by doing your anchor stitch on this side. You did a double crochet chain 1. Then now find that first double crochet, go into the stitch and do a double crochet. That's how you complete that section. Now without chaining 1, now you're starting to work your front post double crochets again. So continue to work your front post double crochets until you reach your peak again. The last double crochet, and then I have my chain 2 space. And every so often I recommend going back and counting how many stitches you have, not counting your peak stitch and just counting when you get to your peak here, split it in half. So counting from this 1 double crochet in your peak stitch all the way until here before your anchor. Don't count your anchor. So just these, count how many stitches you have, and then count how many stitches you have here on the end, because sometimes your ends can get kind of messed up and you add a stitch here and there. So just every so often count. That way you can make an adjustment if you mess up or not. Okay, so once you've counted, you make sure that you have the same amount on both sides on your ends here. Then go ahead and chain 2 and turn. The chain 2 will count as the first stitch of your row. So you're going to go into the second stitch of your row and put a double crochet. Then you're going to continue and put 1 double crochet in each of your stitches. Wow, I sure picked a loud day to crochet. To film. Between the birds and the honking and the trucks backing up. Goodness gracious. So go ahead and put 1 double crochet in each of your stitches until you reach your peak stitch. Okay, now I've reached my 2 peak stitches here. So I'm going to double crochet in the first peak stitch. Then I'm going to split it apart and double crochet 2 in the space in between. Then I'm going to double crochet in the next double crochet of my peak stitch. And now you're going to put 1 double crochet in each stitch. I like to do at least the next few. And then my marker's several rows down, so I want to move it up, so I'll remove my marker, because on the front side here where the texture is can be the hardest to see where the split is. So follow your splits up just to make sure you're marking the right one, because that's not a mistake you want to have to go back and rectify, especially not with this thin yarn. So then you just mark the new one, the new peak, and then continue. And I'll be moving my markers up just like that throughout the whole row. So continue to double crochet down here until you reach your anchor stitch again. Okay, I'm getting close to my anchor stitch. Okay, this very last double crochet here that's connected to the chain. It's not connected to the chain this time, but below. You can always find the anchor stitch because the chains basically direct you right to it. Because I know sometimes it can be difficult to find which one it is. Just follow the chain to the actual anchor stitch. Then you'll know that that's where you put your double crochet. Then once you've done that, we're on our front part now where our chains. So you'll chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You'll find that middle space here and slip stitch on it. Then chain 5. Then again, find that chain, follow it up, and I'll show you right where your anchor stitch is. Oops, I forgot to yarn over. Got to yarn over to do a double crochet. Then you'll put your anchor stitch there, and now you're back to your doing your peaks again. So start double crocheting all the way up to your peak stitch again, and again I will be moving my marker as I go up, and you will continue this down your row, and at the very end of your row, so I usually end my row by putting a double crochet in that very last stitch. That's it, guys. Thank you so very much for watching. If you like this tutorial, please don't forget to like and share and comment. It helps me out so much. Also, if you never want to miss something that comes out for me, you can go to my main YouTube page, and on the side of the subscribe button, click that little bell button and choose all notifications to always be notified whenever something gets released. Also, I have 2 groups on Facebook. One's called Crochet Zone Public, which is more of a public. Designers also share there. And also Crochet for the Masses, which is a more of a private group, if you'd prefer that. Also, I have a group on Pinterest where a lot of designers will also post. I have anywhere from 10 to 20 new posts, free patterns, spam free. So if you're always looking for free patterns and you have a Pinterest account, I recommend going there. It'll help you find all kinds of new free stuff. Also, I have an email. I'll at least try to get an email out once or twice a month to inform you what's been coming out new for me that month. So that's it, guys. Thank you so very much for watching.